Welcome back to the PT Cubed podcast. Now that is fun to say. Welcome back. Not welcome to, welcome back. Because episode 2 is here. Episode 1 already exists. We bridge the gap. Shout out episode 1. Bridge that gap. So, big things. I'm currently talking to you on the new Nate Karam PT Cubed microphone thing that I purchased that is now my bedroom studio. And honestly, sound quality, pretty good. Feel free to give your own input, but the feedback I'm getting on my headset right now, I'm loving it. So, anyway, we took the plunge, and things only get easier after you do it the first time, because once you show yourself that you can do it when you're scared, of course it's going to be easy when you're not scared anymore. So, with that being said, yeah, we're doing this now, and I feel really comfortable doing this now. The feedback and the engagement that I got on that first episode, thank you guys so much. I already had a huge passion for doing this, but now that I feel like I'm not just talking to a wall, you guys made me feel heard, and you just totally heightened my passion. So get ready for some overexcitement and very, probably too emotional, in-depth talks, but that's okay, because that's what this is all about. So I'm glad you're here, and I encourage all of you to open your minds, your ears, that would be good too, and definitely your hearts to the conversation that we're going to have on this show and all shows, because it's going to involve a lot more than simply listening. I want you to walk away from each episode with both new questions and new solutions for yourself. We're going to ask the difficult questions, and we're definitely going to dig into topics that are ignored and often brushed over, because guess what? They surface some deep self-conflict, and it's a little sticky and it's not fun, but they can't be overlooked. It's a necessary step. So buckle in and join me as we begin to assess our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions to learn how developing a relationship with our own mind through honest introspection and reflection can serve as that core foundation in our journey to improving quality of life. And that's what we're here for, right? That is life. We just keep trying to make it better. So this is how we're going to make it better. You're listening to PT Cubed live from the new and improved budget bedroom studio. Let's go. I know. Interlude, pretty cool, right? Uh, I took your guys' advice, and I got some feedback, basically saying, "Hey, let's have more talking, less background music. Let's make it more personable." Sure. So I'm gonna do maybe some of like the more important, dramatic segments. I'll throw in some background music, whatever. But I do want this to feel like a conversation. So we're gonna go for the most of today without any background music, but I'm gonna do little interludes. I thought that was cool. So why are we here? Today, I am first announcing roadmap. So 2024, what's it going to look like? What is PT Cube going to look like? Well, you can consider today and last week's episode part of season 0, kind of, introduction, just get my footing. This is what the channel is going to look like, but not the core of the content yet. So January 22nd, that is Monday and 5 a.m. release time. Bi-weekly from that point on, that is when you should expect to see episodes published. I'm going to schedule it for 5 a.m. every other Monday. In terms of content, in terms of structure, 5 seasons. I figure we're 2 weeks into the year. We got 50 weeks left. Bi-weekly, 25 episodes. I'll split it 5 seasons of 5 episodes. So, first episode of each season, very much like that last one I just did on Bridging the Gap, introduce the overarching topic, give some anecdotal experience, try to stir up some questions. I want you guys to have time after the first episode to really do your own research on the topic, introspect, think about your own experiences, your own self-assessment of how you feel you embody that quality or don't embody that quality, and steps you'd like to take moving forward. Then we'll come in hot with episode 2, where I dig into a subtopic of that specific quality. Episode 3 will be a guest speaker discussion, piggybacking on what I talked about in episode 2. And then 4 and 5 are pretty much going to be the exact same thing as 2 and 3. So you've got like 1, introduction, 2 and 3, duo of a subtopic, 4 and 5, duo of another subtopic. I'm going to see if that works for season 1. If it does, fantastic, and I'm going to stick to that. But I think that that's a pretty comprehensive plan, and it'll allow for multiple perspectives on the channel, not just you guys constantly hearing from me. I know I'm like a genius that knows everything, but it would probably be really good for you guys to collect other perspectives and It's also going to be good for generating conversation and sparking ideas for me because I like talking, and it's a lot more fun to not be talking to a wall. So we're going to keep it fresh. We're going to switch it up every now and then. But yeah, that's my plan. I hope you guys are vibing with that, but that's what we're going to roll with. So let's get into it. So today's episode is going to be all about guiding principles. What guides you? Really, what guides you? I mean, I don't know what guides you. I know what guides me, a lot of different things, and I try to pull from many different perspectives to form kind of a comprehensive plan on how I choose to guide my life because I don't like to be closed minded and I don't like to think that I'm right in assuming things. So, by talking to many, many people and gathering many, many perspectives, you can kind of pull different important things together from different people that you meet, different things you hear, different things you read, and create your own plan for yourself because it's always great to learn from the past and learn from other people's mistakes or successes. So for me, I read a book recently called The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. So this man was a swordsman, philosopher, strategist, also founder of a school of swordsmanship in Japan back during a time of peace post war when we had people known as Ronin. Now, these are a wandering samurai class who had no lord or master. So, post war, they were pretty much a bunch of swords for hire. And they just wandered around trying to find purpose. And along that path of finding purpose, they created moral codes for themselves that they upheld. And Miyamoto, in particular, created a school of thought he calls the way of strategy known as Niten Ichi Ryu. And in this way of strategy, he lays out a comprehensive plan of things to do and things not to do. And I really, really like his interpretation of this because while it may be specific if you take it at surface value to swordsmanship, it's really not. It's not at all. And I got a lot out of this book, and I'm still reflecting on it. And even talking about it right now is great. So I'm going to read you guys the list of things that he spells out as his way of strategy. Number one, do not think dishonestly. Number two, the way is in the training. Number three, become acquainted with every art. Number four, know the ways of all professions. Number five, distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. Number six, develop intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. Number seven, perceive those things which cannot be seen. Number eight, pay attention even to trifles. And number nine, do nothing which is of no use. Now, let's dig into each of these topics specifically. So, number one, do not think dishonestly. Why is this important? How do I interpret it? And how do you make this a core foundation of your life? Well, why don't we think dishonestly? Why is that a bad thing, first of all? Well, when we don't accurately assess ourselves, assess our thoughts, our actions, our feelings, our emotions, everything, we develop a false sense of our own self. And that's dangerous. If you don't fully understand yourself or you don't understand the motives behind your thoughts and actions, and you choose to continue to lie to yourself when you know that you have shortcomings that need to be addressed just because it's scary, and of course it is, but when you do those things and you encourage that behavior for yourself over and over and over, and you lose the ability to honestly assess yourself, you become a person that you do not want to be. Because when we continue to shove out all these thoughts, all these emotions, and block them out and choose to not address them, but instead bury them, that is not an honest assessment of ourselves. You can't bury the things that you know are at the surface because they're scary and they're hard to talk about, and you know that they are a character flaw in you. So, how do we assess ourselves honestly? Well, how do we even think honestly? You have to ask yourself reflective questions. And that's why I'm trying to establish this practice in the podcast. The only way to generate honest thoughts are to ask honest questions. So, here's one. When you wake up in the morning, are you proud of the life that you're living? Pretty deep, right? Yeah, well, let's make it more specific. Are you proud of yesterday? Are you proud of how you lived your life yesterday? And you can take that at surface value. Maybe you're not proud of the eggs that you burnt in your omelet in the morning. Maybe you're not proud of the fact that you continue to not be able to commit to your promises. You can't hold yourself accountable. You're not following through for your friends and you're losing relationships because of it. Maybe you don't have a good relationship with your parents, and maybe it's your fault, maybe it's not your fault. But even if it's not your fault, why aren't you finding solutions? Why aren't you trying? Why do you continue to bury these things? It doesn't do you any good. So start square one by honestly assessing yourself. Am I happy by burying these thoughts? Does that make me happy? Is it actually solving the problem? Or is it simply prolonging it and allowing it to build and then erupt later? Because that's typically what happens with people. Dishonest assessment, you can bury it temporarily. You don't address it and let it fly, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back much more aggressively than if you had addressed it up front. So let's start thinking honestly. Let's start assessing honestly, and we can start that by posing the important questions to ourselves, which I'm going to help you with on this channel. Number 2, the way is in the training. Now, I really like this one. This one immediately sparks thoughts of career for me. So, I'm told all the time, because I worry constantly about, oh my God, am I going to know enough by the time I graduate? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be a competent practitioner by the time I'm done school. And you're not. I mean, you're going to be a generalist. You're going to know a little about a lot, but you learn the majority of your skills when you're thrown to the wolves. Like when you get a job, there's a lot of people that'll hire you just because they like your character. You got a college degree, it's not even relevant to the job. You have a bio degree and you're going to work in marketing or something. They care about the commitment to the craft. They appreciate that you spent those 4 years and you committed and you got the degree. The skills are going to be developed on the job. I mean, it helps to have some background knowledge, but the way is in the training. The way is in the repetition. The way is in the doing. So I touched on this in the previous episode, but it's very easy to conceptualize things, and that's what I want to, of course, include, but also steer away from doing entirely, because anyone can come on a show like this. Anyone can stand in front of a crowd and talk to them about ideas and brainstorm ideas and say, well, you should do this and you should do that and you should be this way. But if you're not putting hows behind the what's and whys, you're not serving anyone properly, because how can you draw a solution from a concept without any concrete structure, without any actual getting out there and doing the thing that you're talking about? So, the ways in the training. You read about philosophy, and in the philosophy books, they tell you this is great and all. It's great to read, it really is, but you should take breaks and you should remove yourself from the reading and go experience, because philosophy in itself is worth nothing if not applied in actual real life experience. And I'm starting to learn this because, of course, it's still important to read. It's still important to be a lifetime learner, to continue to educate yourself, to continue to garner new ideas and build that collection of perspectives that I was talking about. But you have to go and allow yourself the experiences to apply the knowledge that you're gaining, because what is life if not lived? You can read all you want about the good life and about the best life, possible for you. And you can listen to these self-help podcasts. You can go on PT Squared and you can, get inspired by one of these segments. But I'm asking you to go and act after that. I'm asking you to take what you learn and apply it to your training, apply it to your life, apply it to everything that you do, because the way's in the training. You can learn all you want, but you have to apply. Number 3, and side note, I keep like very quietly burping under my breath and I cannot stop. And I really hope that you guys can't hear it, but I'm just going to power through here. Thank you, coffee and breakfast. Anyway, become acquainted with every art. Why is this important? You're a guitarist, or I don't know, you're a incredibly good drummer, you're an incredibly good figure skater. That's your art. And that's the thing that you're really good at, and you know that, and you're okay at some other things, but you're really the best at that one thing. So like, you're committed to it. What's the point of, branching out and trying to learn about other things when you need to stay the top of that. Well, I pose you this question. What about that other person who has the same qualities as you, has that same ambition, that passion, that burning spirit that really just draws you into people? I call it like the it factor. I mean, you just know when someone has it. They're like a person where you're like, I want them around. Like that person inspires me. That person, like, I don't even have any interest in the stuff that they do. I don't even know what they do. Like, I don't know the foundation of what they do or anything about it, but that clearly makes them a very interesting person. So for me, I feel like if you keep an open mind and you're constantly curious and you ask questions, you can never go wrong. So become acquainted with every art. That doesn't mean learn every art. I mean, well, we're going to talk about that in the next point, but you don't have to be a master of all things. You can be decent at a lot of things and very good at one thing. People have innate talents. Some people are born with the ability to do things much more naturally than other people, and that's fantastic. But that doesn't mean that you should hone into that one thing. You know, if you're genetically gifted in a certain muscle group, are you going to just work out that muscle group every day because it's easier to grow? You're going to like try to keep things balanced and work on the hard stuff, and it applies to everything. Like let's say you're watching someone do construction on the side of the road, and you're like, why do they all look so happy? I mean, it's like 110 degrees outside, Florida heat. They're sweating. It's nasty. They're hammering away all day, laying bricks. Well, they're probably doing it for a reason because they enjoy it. So maybe ask a question. If you know someone who does a certain trade, profession, art, anything, ask them why. Ask them how it makes them feel. And I guarantee you that you're going to end up in a very, very passionate conversation where they teach you a thing or two about what they do. And any ounce, any amount of knowledge, any perspectives to broaden your own view on the world, that's valuable. And that makes you a more interesting person. That makes you a more educated person. And it just gives you a wider scope of everything and how all things intertwine, because you would never believe the connection between different things that really, really don't seem relevant at all to each other at surface value, but they are. And that's what I'm going to get into with point number 4. That brings us to point number 4. Know the ways of all professions. Now, this one is more specific in the sense of actually knowing the way, not appreciating the art, but knowing the way. And this doesn't mean, like I said, don't try to be a master at everything. I think that we were given a certain amount of lifespan, and it is certainly not enough to become a master of every profession. So, how do you know the way without really working that profession? Well, having a basic understanding of every profession, every job, everything specifically related to, or that you can draw connections to the thing that you do, is going to be very valuable in your life. And I personally think about my future profession as a physical therapist. So, personal example here, sure. PT will be my primary skill set, but wouldn't I be much better suited to be an excellent PT if I actually understood the workings of every other profession involved in all those different layers of healthcare? Because it's not just me. You know, I am a piece of the puzzle to that patient to get them to their end goal. And while I might be a significant piece of the puzzle in terms of rehab, because all of the rehab is happening for the most part inside of the clinic, if other aspects, if the other puzzle pieces are not being placed properly, that patient is not going to have the best outcomes possible. I can do my job as best as I can day in and day out, but if the other practitioners in all those other practices are not helping the patient in the same way that I am, or not giving their all and putting their energy into it, it is your responsibility to recognize that. It's not your responsibility. It's not within my scope of practice to be prescribing medications and dosing for patients and stuff, but we take pharmacology in PT school for a reason. And at first it was a little confusing to me, like I understand that it's been a master's degree for a while. Now it's a doctorate. Now they expect us to have a doctoral education, but you sit in like pharmacology sometimes and you're just wondering, why do I need to know about all these medications? If I'm not going to be, well, the answer is, what if the doctor doses a patient in a way that is giving them very, very, very bad reactions and specifically impacting your ability to give them therapy when they're in the clinic? because two of their medications are interacting and they have too high of a dose of one of them and now they're dizzy and they can't perform the therapy correctly. Well, if you understand and you have knowledge of what medications they're taking and you know how they interact with each other, which we do now, so we can make those clinical judgments, you can then go and speak to the other practitioners, the other puzzle pieces, the other members of that healthcare team that are providing this patient care, and give them your insight. That makes you a whole nother level of a practitioner. That makes you a whole nother level of any career, doesn't matter. If you understand the other careers that work hand in hand with yours, specifically, it's still important to know others too. But if you know all the puzzle pieces, at least a little bit, enough to make judgment, you're going to be able to interact with them and ask the important questions and make sure that things are getting done the right way. Things are getting done the most efficient way. Because if I have no understanding of their scope of practice, I mean, the understanding for Musashi, if we want to take it back to the book, the understanding of multiple trades was a huge thing for him. And it actually spelled victory for him on multiple occasions. I mean, this guy was famous for, I think it was like 61 duels or something he had in his lifetime, and he won every single one of them. There was a reason, he stood by this way that he created, and that the way is in the training, and that the way is knowing all these different skill sets. Because in one of his duels, he pulled up to a shore on a rowboat and forgot his sword because he was late. So this guy gets out of his rowboat and crafts a sword out of the oar because he knew carpentry, and then beat the man in combat who was wielding an actual blade. So, I mean, um, that's a historical example, and I wasn't there, so I can't attest and say that it was true. But I'm gonna roll with it was true because that's a pretty cool story. So what I take out of that is, I mean, we're not beating the shit out of each other with oars now. I mean, maybe you are. Be a little concerned if you were, but you can take that lesson and apply it to anything because of his knowledge of another trade, because of his interest and his time committed to understanding a trade that was similar to his. It spelled victory. So that is an important lesson to me, and I think that anyone can take that and apply it to their life. Number 5, distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. Now, this one I had to think on for a while, and how I was going to interpret this, but I think I have a pretty comprehensive statement ready here. So this is how I see it. Distinguishing between gain and loss at its core, obviously, is for me deciding what is worth dwelling on and what is not worth dwelling on. So, is something really a loss if viewed with a different perspective through a different lens? This is often a practice that I really really fall back on. I mean, if you have your worst moments, some of your worst memories, you look back on them, isn't it kind of interesting how usually good follows bad? And how usually there's always a lesson at least to be drawn out of what you perceive as a bad experience. So, distinguish between gain and loss, I look at that as we should understand the implication of our actions and our decisions and discern what truly matters. And I'm gonna drop a big stoicism bomb on here because that's all I do is talk about stoicism, and it's a practice that has really changed my life. And one of the core concepts of stoicism is understanding what is within your control, what is not in your control. And step 2 after identifying those two things is completely trash into the trash folder for everything that is not in your control, that there is no sense in looking back on the past and beating yourself up over things that you simply could not control. Like if you could time travel back and you could actually change the outcome yourself, then okay, maybe it's worth some thought. But if you had no way to change the outcome of the event that occurred to you, why are you still sitting on it? Because you can't move forward if you're looking back, you know? So that's a lesson that I intertwine into this is you have to view your life from different perspectives. So you can zoom in for details and zoom out for the larger context. And every decision becomes an opportunity to weigh these gains and losses beyond just the material, the surface value, and consider the impact on our lives. So when you take a really bad event that happened to you that you in that time perceived as a really bad event, look at it retrospectively and start creating a web of events that occurred after that. Because we're broken down in order to build back up. And I really do believe that. I think that what you perceive as bad events are growth events. And sometimes the world seems really cruel and it seems like it's playing games with us and everything, but at the end of the day, I mean, no one is coming to save you. And I don't want that to sound depressing or anything, but like really, no one is coming to save you. If you find yourself in a hole, I mean, maybe you have some good friends that are going to like, help talk to you, and, family's always there to help, hopefully, stuff like that. But you are the king of your own mind. You're the queen of your own mind. You are the one that makes the judgment call. You're the one that pulls yourself out of the hole. You can have hands reach down to you, but if you don't stand up and grab at them, and you don't actually look to get out of the situation that you're in, you're not going to. And if you keep looking back, you keep looking down, you're just going to dig yourself deeper and deeper into that hole. So, perspective. That's the core concept of this lesson here that Musashi was giving in my context. Change your perspective, stop looking at the past, and you need to start finding the good in the perceived bad instead of how did I feel at that time when it happened and just lingering on all these bad thoughts, all these bad memories and bad feelings. Think about what's come of it, how you've grown, lessons that you learned from it. Try to twist everything positive, and all that's going to be left in your mind is a bunch of good. So stop looking at the what was and look at the now what is, and what can I make out of it if you haven't yet. So number 6 is developing intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. Now, I'm going to brush over the second part a little bit because he's very, very persistent on understanding everything, having a broad understanding. But let's focus on the new half of that point, which is developing intuitive judgment. So, what do I think when I think of this? Well, the lesson here kind of tells us to take an abstract concept and zoom in a little bit. So we have to enhance our sense of intuition through awareness. And how do we enhance our sense of awareness? Well, for me, mindfulness practices and specifically meditation. And this is something that you'll read a lot about. You'll hear a lot about. Everyone tells you, meditate, it'll change your life. Why does it change your life? What is it actually changing? It is changing your ability to quiet down that very, very loud and active voice in your head, or the the static, the noise. There's always noise, there's always traffic. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Everyone has their own version of traffic. You lay down in bed and you're looking for peace and quiet, and all of a sudden your mind's just running a million miles an hour, and you have no control over it. You don't know how to stop it. You just go down this rabbit hole of thoughts, crazy, random, like, next thing you know, you're sitting there at 2 a.m. thinking about that time that you went to deadlift and you farted really loud, and then everyone in the gym turned and looked at you, and now it's really awkward and embarrassing, but you pretended like it didn't happen and you just kept lifting, but then you did it again like 5 minutes later, and then everyone thought that you were doing it on purpose and started like side-eyeing you. And this is just like this is like a friend's experience. Like, this is not me. Like, that didn't happen to me. But like, that's just an example of like what could possibly like come into your mind at 2 a.m. in the morning when you if you're not meditating. Yeah. So when you learn how to meditate, um, you you get a little confused at first. It's like, what exactly am I doing? Am I just sitting here in silence? And it's not the sitting in silence that is helping you. It's the allowing everything to be felt all at once, is how I like to put it. And I do this by focusing in on one thing very, very, very intently. And sometimes it's like I just sit down and I find a really nice corner, like a corner of a desk or a corner of a chair or something. And I just stare at that thing. I dead stare at it. And I'm like, I analyze that. Like, is that really a 90-degree angle? I don't know. It looks more like 80, 88, 89. Or sometimes it's my breathing. That's the one they like to start people with is just breathe. And just only thing you think about is your breathing. And what does this do? It creates a hyper awareness, hyper alert state of one thing and drowns out everything else. And sometimes that can be the perfect method of quieting your brain. If you can just hone in on one thing and find one thing that quiets out everything else, if you just keep doing that one thing each day for just a little bit of time, it's going to teach you how to control that air traffic that goes on in your head. And it's going to develop your awareness. Your sense of awareness is going to allow you to, in your everyday practice, hone in on specific things and draw your focus onto one thing. You might be in a very crowded room with a lot of different noises, a lot of different sounds. You could be walking around a nature path or something, and suddenly you find that you have the ability to just pick one thing and hear that one thing. You listen to music. I mean, after meditating for like 2 years, sometimes I listen to music now and realize I suddenly have this ability to just completely drown out everything going on and listen to like the bass line, or hear the different layers of like harmony in the music and stuff like that. And I'm not just saying I like developed like supersonic ears or whatever. It's like, it's not that I became more tuned in to the sound of the bass. It's the fact that I am now able to tune other things out and really genuinely only hear that one thing for what it is. And that is what I believe is developing intuitive judgment in the basis of awareness. When you have that awareness, you inevitably become more intuitive. You become a better decision maker. You know, when you're hyper alert and you're hyper aware and you're constantly aware of what's going on with you and around you and your surroundings, suddenly it becomes a lot easier to make those decisions, those very sudden decisions when it comes time to a dire situation and you need to be the decision maker. And that's what makes a good leader, someone with good intuition. And for me, it starts with traffic control. You know, air traffic, control it, focus, hone in on one thing, dim everything else down. And number 7 is to perceive those things which cannot be seen. And this might be one of the most difficult topics to conceptualize in a very straightforward manner, because there's just so many different ways to interpret what he says here, and it's a very abstract concept. So my view on this is, I mean, if you want to get really, really philosophical, I'll have another interpretation of it, but on a very literal sense, I mean, are you really perceiving something for what it is if you're only looking at it? Like, I could sit here and browse through Google Images for, a whole week straight and look at everywhere that there is to see in the world, every wonder, every, monument, every point of interest, everything, and then go and tell people, like, yeah, I've seen all of it. I mean, in a literal sense, that's true. I have seen all of it. I looked at all of it, but did I perceive all of it? Did I experience all of it? Is just vision? Is that the human experience? Is just looking at things and not appreciating all the other senses that you have? Is that really true experience? Like, if you didn't stand there in, I don't know, Sequoia National Park and listen and smell, I mean, like, all the smells that come with nature that really make you like bring you back to your primal instinct and make you understand, like, wow, yeah, this is great. Like, you know what I'm talking about. You nature people, you hikers, like, you get out there and it just feels fresh, Like, your body knows you're supposed to be there. It's like harmony. Like, yeah, this is good. I feel good now. Just take a deep breath. Did you listen? Like, did you stand there at that one moment in time and take in all the different things that there are to take in? Because it's not just one tree. There's, like, you're standing in the middle of a whole ecosystem, and there's so many different things. Like what I just said on intuition and awareness and meditation. Once you hone in those skills and become a more intuitive and aware person, you can really experience things more for what they are. You can stand there in that moment and one by one, quiet the traffic and hone in on specific things, like the little ant crawling around, or the bird chirping on the tree. You can find exactly where it's at, or anything like the little tiny splash of dew coming down on a leaf. And it sounds like probably stupid to some of you, but it's like that is really like the human experience, using all your senses, like perceiving things that aren't just there for your eyes. And we were like gifted that for a reason, and we should use it because it really hones our perception as a whole of every experience in our life. Like, I mean, sure, like, you've been to the Grand Canyon, but did you lick the rocks? Because if you, like, taste is a sense too. If you're not licking everything, I don't think you've truly experienced it. Uh, yeah, but broaden your horizons. Don't just look at things. See them for what they are. Like, look at a tree and see its roots. You can't see them, but imagine them. Imagine the interconnectedness of everything, and it makes everything so much more beautiful. Like, so much more, so real. Like, in the way that humans interact with each other and form teams and cohesive units and communities and everything. I mean, nature's the same way. That's how I look at it. And if you can overlay these deeper understandings of things, it makes the world so much more interesting. I'm in the gym, and I always come back to that. But here's a good PT squared example here. The gym and physical therapy. You start to learn about the human body and the interactions and force couplings of different muscle groups, and kinesiology and lever systems and all these things. And then you just start to conceptualize your body differently. You go in there and it's not just a curl anymore. It's not just a squat anymore. it's a whole system. I'm like, I see an overlay on my own body in the mirror of like angles and forces and trajectories and pulleys, and like it helps me feel what I'm doing. You know, people talk about the pump and the mind muscle connection and everything. Well, I'll tell you what, learn about the human body and learn a thing or two about physiology and kinesiology, and I think you'll get a much better mind muscle connection, because ever since I've done that, it's been unreal. It's like you perceive, it really is like you perceive things that aren't even there. So that's my piece on it. But I really do stand by that one, regardless of how abstract of a concept that might seem. Number 8 is pay attention even to trifles. So what does that mean? Well, we should not be negligent. We should pay attention even to like the smallest details in everything that we do, because we start to obtain this sense of what can I pay mind to and what can I ignore without any consequences. You know, you just start to look at things inherently as like not important, or you know, it's whatever, like it doesn't really like carry any meaning to anything, but maybe it does. So make the small things big. And if you keep them in mind all the time, you'll avoid like unexpected failure or unexpected events. It makes you more, again, back to it, it makes you more intuitive. It makes you more aware, and it grants a greater scope of the things that you're perceiving. So you can do this with people, you can do this with events, anything. I mean, really, really, like look at the things that you never consider, and take whatever understanding you have of the person that you're speaking to, or the person that you're perceiving, or the thing that you're perceiving. And instead of asking the obvious questions that you would always ask and perceiving things as you usually would, start asking the things that you don't like. You know, you see someone who's just really just being an asshole, like, you know, another way to say it, they're just being an asshole. And they've been an asshole for a while, and you're like, what is wrong with this person? Like, why are they acting this way? There's got to be a reason. Instead of taking the energy that they're putting out, reflecting it back at them, and making them believe that it's justified because other people are doing it too, why don't you flip the script? You know, if you pay attention to the small things and you understand, like, okay, this person is exhibiting this behavior every time X happens, whatever, you know, in this scenario, they always seem upset. Well, counter it with kindness. Counter it with um let's go to the gym again. You got Mr. Big Guy, Mr. Absolute just jerk, no gym etiquette guy in your gym that you can't stand, and he's, you know, puffing his chest walking around. He's Mr. Big Shot, and you notice him. He's about to walk out of the gym, about to stomp right over you, not even, you know, acknowledge your presence. Open the door for him and tell him, "Have a nice day, bro." He doesn't even need to know you. You know, just have a nice day. Good seeing you. And he's gonna be stuck with that, whether or not he wants to be. He's gonna be like, "Why was that guy nice to me?" You know, like all I've done is be an asshole. Why is he being nice to me? And you're planting the seed in someone else's head and forcing the exact same concept that you just forced on yourself. You know, you paid attention to something you usually don't pay attention to. Well, now you've got their attention and they're paying attention to someone or a quality or something that they don't usually perceive because they brush it aside. Now they're thinking about, like, well, okay, what caused them to do that? Like, why would someone do that? I'm always mean. I'm always cold. Like, what would what would make someone want to do that for me and go out of their way to? And you know, this is with anything, anytime you do an act of kindness for someone with nothing, expecting nothing in return, just simply doing it, especially when someone's having a bad day, you know, you never know what people are going through. You don't. And if you're someone who doesn't ask the questions and is not interested to know, then at least be interested enough to perceive those things, and don't ignore the trifles, you know, don't ignore the small things. And if you start seeing those things and you start acting on them, your behavior is going to change other people's behavior, because people tend to reflect what's given to them. And if you come at someone with anger and you come at someone with resentment for what they're doing, you're just going to fuel the fire, and you're going to piss them off even more. And they might be going through some stuff and they might just be projecting, but if you're nice to them and you flip the script, it's going to make them think, and they're going to be stuck thinking about that. And that's what starts this whole process of reflection and introspection. So start planting seeds in people's head. And that brings us to number 9. Last point here: do nothing which is of no use. So don't engage in useless activity. You know, don't engage in useless arguments. Don't prolong conversations that are not going anywhere. You know, People like to just argue for the sake of arguing, or you know, do things that don't actually benefit them in any way, just because it's come to be a hobby. It's just something that they do. But like, is it really a productive hobby? Are you actually getting anything out of it? Like, you need to ask yourself these questions: is what I'm doing actually worth my time? Because you respect your body, right? I mean, I would hope you do. I hope everyone respects their body, because that's like, that's your temple. Like, that's a reflection of all your trials, all your triumphs, everything. Your body is you. It's a physical depiction of you and what you've done in your lifetime. And you should be proud of that, and you should respect it. So why don't you respect your mind and your headspace and your time in the same way that you respect your body? Because time is valuable. We only have so much time here. So why are you wasting it talking to people and interacting with people that aren't uplifting you and aren't making you a better person and aren't forcing you to grow? Why aren't you making sure that the interactions and the experiences that you have in your life are worthwhile and worth your time? And you can know that they are by being able to look back on them and know that you pulled something important out of it, a lesson or some sort of growth, some sort of climb to the next step. And that's why I always say, people tell you, you are who you surround yourself with. Well, you are. But in that same way, it can be a good thing, because people usually say that in a bad context of like, oh, well, you're hanging out with all these people that don't do good things and are bad role models, so you're going to become like them. So it's usually parents telling their kids stuff like that. But I would pose the question, like, you know, what if you surround yourself with just a bunch of people who you're inspired by, and a bunch of people who, I'm not going to say are better than you, but that you feel are further down the line than you in their development? Because once you start surrounding yourself with a bunch of people that are like one step ahead of you, or what you perceive to be one step ahead of you, you're going to have help in every direction pulling you forward and teaching you methods on how to get yourself to that place that they are. So what I do really find it flattering sometimes when people, will tell me like, "Hey man, like you have my dream physique," or like, "Hey man, I want to be just like you," on my fitness account and stuff like that. And my response to that is, "Thank you, but you should admire qualities in me, not my physical appearance." Like, when I look at people and I look at role models, I don't want to be that person, because the most cool, awesome, authentic thing about you is that you're you and that no one else is you. So why would you want to be someone else? That takes away your authenticity. Take qualities that you see in other people, and take things that you learn from other people and apply them to yourself. I like to pull a bunch of different things from a bunch of different people and mesh them into one big pot and stir that around. And then that's me. I am, at my foundation, a collection of all the best things that I see in other people. And I think that's a really good point to close out on here, is that you don't have to take everything for what it is. Take everything with a grain of salt when you talk to people. It's not like just because they're older than you, just because you see them as a mentor figure, that you have to believe everything they say. You should take perspectives, take thoughts, take information, take bits of it that you find are true to you, or that you find are valuable to your experience as a person and your growth as an individual, and mold them all together. And next thing you know, you have this giant fusion of all the best things that you found in other people. And that makes you pretty powerful. I mean, that is a dangerous person there. That is someone who, through hundreds of connections and lifetimes of experiences of different people's minds and thoughts, and, you know, just demonstrations, that is someone who has taken the past and taken mistakes and successes of the past and molded it into their own person. And that's my goal. That's what I like to do. And that's what I would encourage you guys to do. So don't waste your time with useless things. Always be looking for new inspiring people to be around, and look for intellectual conversation. Like, ditch the small talk, get off the dating apps, like go meet people and really really understand people. Don't just talk to them, understand them and understand their motives. And going back to some of those original points that I said, like, understand what drives them. You should be curious. When you see someone who's really passionate, who's really happy, and you're just like, wow, that's a really happy person, like, I wonder why that person's life is so good. Ask them. I mean, don't literally ask them like, "Hey man, why is your life so great?" But like, if they're interested in something, they post about it all the time, and they have a profession or an art or a skill or some kind of driving force that pulls them through their life, talk to them about it, because they're going to be excited that you asked, and you're going to be able to draw a lot of really valuable experiences from them. And with that, you have Miyamoto Musashi's Way of Strategy, interpreted by Nate Karam on PT Cubed. And I really, really hope that this was valuable. Um, it was not just a book on swordsmanship for me. I mean, I hope you can tell through some of these explanations that they are very, very relevant lessons that can be applied in every aspect of life. And I feel that, these are just 9 points made by a man in a cave at the end of his lifespan, reflecting on his experience as a swordsman-philosopher and founding this school, and everything that came to be of his life. And I find that end of life wisdom is usually pretty valuable, because it's when people are willing to be the most real. When you know that you're about to die and you know that your life's at its end, the last thing that you have to do is give people something to remember. And if you don't share those experiences and you don't pass down your knowledge, it's useless, And that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned back in the day. And something that I've been really working on hard with myself is not just doing things for me, not seeking things because it's a title for me, or it makes me look better, or I have all the awards in the book. Back in JRTC, that's all I was worried about in high school was being the one with the most awards and being the highest ranking. And there's just no purpose behind it, other than making me look better and putting me in leadership roles just for me to walk around all arrogant and, oh, I'm better than you because I outrank you. Okay, well, your rank is useless because you didn't teach anyone below you anything valuable. So as soon as I left, all my knowledge left with me. And that is what I'm making a point to not happen in this lifespan. For me, everything that I learn, all this effort that I go through to try to become a better person, is so that I can better serve other people. And I hope that you guys find some driving purpose like that as well, or a reason to keep looking and keep being curious and obtaining new knowledge, because I truly do believe that a lot of that knowledge is just completely useless if not passed down. So learn, read, do everything you can to understand as many different things as you can to make yourself a more interesting and educated person, but pass that knowledge down. Find your own interpretations of the things that you learn. Don't just go online and search up, like, what does this mean when you're reading? Create your own interpretation. There's no right or wrong, especially when you're reading about philosophy and people's life experiences. Apply it to yourself. It's going to be individual to everyone, so don't think because someone else interpreted something a certain way means that you're wrong. I mean, when I listed out those things, and when you're thinking about each of Musashi's points, like, you could have a completely different interpretation, and that's awesome. That's what I hope for. And this is why I want to have guest speakers in the future, because you will get multiple perspectives in this one conversation, not just me and my points. I truly hope that my points provide value and maybe some understanding to his principles, but that's the coolest part about all this, is that I could talk to every single one of you separately, and you could give me a completely different interpretation of that, and I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take the parts that I enjoy out of that and mold it, into one thing, one big pot of, I like that. And that's what you should do with everything. So, that was episode 2, Guiding Principles. You are listening to the PT Cube podcast, coming from the new and approved bedroom studio. It was great having you guys today. I hope you all have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, anything, whenever you're listening to this. I love all of you, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.